Hey guys, it's Shay from Network. Welcome to today's video, which is the Mlb Baseball games past and present iOS edition tier list. As you can tell from the title, pretty much any games past or present to have been on iOS that I played, and it's literally been about 10 years now that I've had an iOS device that I can play these games on, is on this list. The different tiers are S for the best of the best, A for very good games that to me just aren't quite the best of the best. B tier is above average. C tier is average to maybe slightly below average. D games are terrible. And the F tier is reserved for one game that you literally should not download. And if you've downloaded it and played it, you should just throw your phone out the window and let your phone die off. But anyways, now that I'm done with the intro, we're going to jump into the rankings. Starting with the first icon, which is for 9 innings 13. It's also going to represent 9 innings 11 because I couldn't find an icon for 9 innings 11. These are a couple of the OG 9 innings franchise games. 9 innings 11 was the first game to introduce kind of the ultimate team builder concept to mobile games. It was a 2D gameplay, but it had all of the MLB players. It didn't have the teams licensed into it quite yet, nor did 9 innings 13 through 16, but again, it had the fantasy team concept, and it expanded to have an open auction house. How it limited coin profiting is it limited how many coins you could make active for the auction house each day. You could only use coins activated to auction house purposes for auctions, and I believe it might have limited how many cards you could list as well. So it had an open market while still not allowing profits to get out of control. Both were pioneers of their time. Both were great games and technically can still be played. They just aren't actively in the App Store anymore. So S tier for that. Then we have its current version, 9 innings 19. Now, 9 innings 19 did away with the open market. That's kind of a negative. It also doesn't have live action head-to-head gameplay like Perfect Inning does. But despite those two negatives, it has several different great, enjoyable game modes. So if you don't like one game mode, there's plenty of other game modes to try out that you'll hopefully like. And for that reason, 9 innings 19 also finds its way to the S tier. Third up, we have Mlb 9 Innings Gm. This game, to be perfectly honest, seems kind of pointless to be in existence because there's 9 innings 19, you can simulate a bunch. There's also Perfect Inning, and they both offer the same team building capabilities. Well, you can also play games with your actual team if you feel like doing that. Where it's the third wheel and it doesn't seem to really have a point, well, it's not a terrible game. It's below average because it's owned by Come To Us, which is the same parent company as Gameville, which is the same parent company for both superior games, so it's a C tier game for that reason. Then we have Mlb Ballpark Empire, another historic game. This one, you would slowly build your team over time, but it was mainly focused on building a bigger and better stadium for your team. Eventually, you could customize the ballpark towards your specific major league team, but it took way too much time and effort to really develop much in this game, and that slow development held it back, so it's a C tier game for me. Then we have Wgt Baseball Mobile. It had one game mode. You could draft your team, and you could play a single game. You could change difficulties and game lengths, and there was dynamic differences in those. With the drafts, there were, I believe, 5 Major League players you could draft in the free version, and then you could pay to unlock additional draftable Major League Baseball players. I wasn't a huge fan of that pay-to-win aspect, but I also understand they made this a free game, and they needed to make their money somehow. The fact they didn't have season mode was a big killer, though. When I played Wgt Baseball on the computer back in the day, my favorite thing to do was to draft a team and play through an entire season. I remember it would be the type of deal where, I was a little kid. I could only play 1 or 2 games a day, but I look forward to being allowed on the computer each day to get closer and closer to a perfect season. It was one of my favorite memories. So the fact it didn't have season mode is a huge detractor. It's still a very good game though, so I'm going to put it in the B tier because it is above average, but without that season mode, it lost a lot. Then I'm going to talk about two games next. We've got Baseball 9 and Baseball Star. Very similar games. Baseball 9 is a little bit more dynamic than Baseball Star. They're both B- C+ tier games for me. So I'm putting Baseball 9 in B and Baseball Star in C. Because again, Baseball 9 to me just had a little bit more for development. The AIs were not particularly difficult to overcome over time. It's very generic players on the team, so there's no real attachment unless you get truly invested in your specific team. But at the same time, it does offer a good level of team building and franchise gameplay. Then we've got Baseball Boy. This is barely a baseball game. It's just one of those where you tap and you launch the baseball as far as you can. It could literally be a dude out of a cannon. It could be a football off of a kicking tee. They just branded it as baseball. Now, it's not truly horrible, so it won't go in F tier, although you watch 40 minutes of ads to play the game for 20 minutes. If you don't believe me, I've tried making a video on the game once, and I did, but it was a disaster to actually get the video out. Then we have Baseball Megastar. It's not your traditional baseball game, certainly. What it is, it has a bunch of mini games, some pitching challenges, and some hitting challenges. The difficulties increase over time, which is nice, but it's called Baseball Superstar. I haven't gotten to the point where I've felt like I've had my specific superstar I'm developing, even though it does let you make your own player. To me, it just feels like, oh, I'm playing through these different challenges. The challenges do repeat themselves, although there are at least a few different challenges. Considering all of that, to me, it's solidly in the B tier. Then we've got Baseball Superstars 2012, which is the current version of Baseball Superstars, in my opinion. Yes, there's 2013, but 2013 is not optimized for iOS currently. 2012 has been getting those good updates. It was their most popular version of the franchise, and to me, it's not their best version in their franchise, but it is still a very solid version. It has great career modes for developing a batter or a pitcher. The only drawback is that they added this obnoxious storyline that's way too drawn out. So while that is a negative, it still is overall a great game. It's going to be the very top of A tier for me, very close to S tier. But again, the story mode just detracts from it enough where I can't give it an honest S tier ranking. Then we've got Big Win Baseball, another sim-only game. It does give you animations of your team playing in-game. It does have MLB licensing, but it isn't really a realistic GM experience. It's very similar to MLB GM, just with a different developer. So while it is a different developer whose games exclusively are sim, the way it presents itself as a sim-only game in 2019, it gets a C tier ranking from me. Up next, we've got Top Spun. You might not consider it a baseball game. It is mainly just virtual trading cards that you trade around, but its trading system is great. There are mini games with it, whether it's contests based on real-life performances, the prize wheel where you spin the wheel with free tickets you get over time to get free cards, or you can take those tickets and play the batter up game where you draw cards and you get coins and occasionally inserts. Because it's not truly a baseball game, it can't rank too highly. Because it has glitches sometimes, it also can't rank too highly, but it is a great mobile trading card app. The trading is pretty fluid, so considering all of that, I'm going to put it in the B tier, second best to Backyard Baseball currently. And we have CBS Sports Franchise Baseball, an old version of these GM modes. It was more dynamic in terms of you would get currencies you could choose to upgrade your team in a variety of ways. You also got free draft picks each day. But even considering those, it was just a franchise builder. There wasn't anything particularly dynamic or unique about it. So it's going to fit in with the other franchise builders in C tier. Up next, we have Chevy Baseball. I made a video on Chevy Baseball. I wasn't having the best time with it. It was a difficult game. It has one game mode. You can only choose one of two teams, and you can only play a standard baseball game. With that being said, I played the game more after I made that video. I had fun overcoming the difficulty and challenge of the game, and even once I got comfortable with the game, it wasn't particularly easy. It was well balanced. So I've got to say, Chevy Baseball, for as limited as your game was, you had a very, very strong AI for strictly a promotional game. So for that reason, despite it being a underwhelming game, its excellent AI is going to place it in B tier for me. Then we've got Flick Homerun. It was relatively popular, at least back in the day. Basically, you swipe the screen, the ball flies in the air, and however far it lands is what it did. I could compare it to baseball boy and put it in the D tier, but it wasn't nearly as heavily infested with ads. It was also from an earlier time when that type of game was actually popular. It was developed better, in my opinion. So for those reasons, while it may be a D tier in 2019, considering the era it was in, I'm going to put it in C tier just above those very basic GM games. Then we have Mlb.com Franchise Mvp, another game with my career mode besides Baseball Superstars. Might be the only game that I know of that had it. It was okay, sure, but it was strictly in vertical orientation, which made tracking the baseball difficult sometimes. Being a pitcher was too easy, and being a batter was too difficult. The AI never was really particularly balanced with it. It did have real minor league ranks you could rise up to and then get to the majors. It was an okay game. It could have been a lot better, though. I'm going to put it towards the top of C tier because it could have been better, but it also wasn't entirely awful. Then the next two games I'm going to talk about are both Home Run Derby games. The first one is from the MLB. The MLB one I love. I've played it for at least 5 years. At FanFest for an all-star game, I played in a contest for it. I won the contest. I got an autographed baseball for it, so I might be a little bit biased. But let's break this game down objectively. Within the Home Run Derby, there's 3 game modes. There's arcade mode, where you get as many points as you can in a finite amount of time. And then there's Home Run Derbies both against the AI and against other people. You play these games, you get coins, you get MLB bucks, and you get free packs. You use all of those to unlock and upgrade different real Home Run Derby participants over past years. The pay to advance part of things is you can pay to unlock ballparks, you can pay for additional packs to unlock and upgrade batters quicker. The batters do have statistical advantages, but again, you can unlock them for free over time. The stadiums are purely cosmetic. It's developed very, very well. The controls are very simple. There's tap controls. You move the bat around to match the zone. The pitches start off in the same location, but over time move around. So while everyone can get a base amount of home runs, it does require skill to get more home runs than your competitor. I think the balance is great in this game. It's an S-tier Home Run Derby game. And then there's Home Run Clash. To me, without the Major League licensing, it's never going to be quite as good as MLB Home Run Derby. It still does require dynamic skill levels. It focuses strictly on the online head-to-head game mode, and there might be a few solo challenges mixed in as like daily challenges. A very good game, just not quite as dynamic, so it's going to end up in the A tier. It should be happy to be in the A tier. Then we've got Wgt Baseball. This game had 3D graphics back when that was revolutionary. To be honest, the gameplay itself was below average. With the graphics, I would probably put it in C tier. Because it's Derek Jeter, and Derek Jeter messed up the Marlins, it's D tier. Then we've got the game that you've seen most on my channel, MLB Perfect Inning 2019. Now, if this was Perfect Inning Live, it would be S tier. If it was Perfect Inning 2018, early on it would be A tier. Currently, it would be S tier. My current feelings on the game, I could probably put it in B tier if I wanted to be that salty. The updates are just not very good. They haven't fixed any of the real issues with the game, and their events are not events. That being said, it is still, in my opinion, despite those issues, one of the top 3 games on the market. It's an S tier for its online head-to-head gameplay, but its other issues drag it down a bit. I'm putting it in the A tier. A tier game's still good, just might be flawed a bit. Up next, we have the out-of-the-park mobile version of a GM simulator. I believe it's called Mlb GM 2018 officially. I've made a video on the game recently where I did a fantasy draft and built a team. This is another GM game. It's very GM oriented, but what sets it apart from the C tier GM games for me is that it's less focused on getting these cards and building up your team, but only from a GM perspective, and it is heavily focused on being an actual GM. You've got a salary cap, you've got arbitration, you've got players hitting free agency, you've got to decide who to re-sign, you've got to decide who to let walk. They have draft picks for a draft, and they actually have draft picks being given out as you lose premium free agents, and you lose draft picks to sign premium free agents. It's a very realistic GM experience. It's not truly perfect, but it's very, very close. It could be improved still, and people have been asking for improvements for a couple of years in the reviews of previous versions that haven't quite came along yet. So I'm going to put it at the very top of A tier. It can move to S tier if it listened to its consumers and made those improvements. Then we've got a historic game, Mlb Power Pros. It was MLB licensed in 2010, and before that was unlicensed in 2009 and used some generic teams. This game was a very early game. It was in vertical orientation, but unlike Mlb Com Franchise Mvp, you could track the baseball at all times. It was ahead of its time in gameplay. The gameplay was pretty easy though, so it falls into A tier because it was ahead of its time, a very good game, but it had a few of those issues that just held it back from being a truly S tier game. Then we've got Rbi Baseball. This ranking can apply to any version 2018 or before. I haven't played 2019, but I've played every other version. And what I'll say, it has one game mode. It's pretty simple, pretty plain. The game's difficult until you figure out how to play it, and then it can become pretty easy. It has added season modes, but the season mode AI is not particularly intelligent. It's not particularly clear where player rankings show up for any of these players that make them better or worse. You can obviously say, well, Mike Trout is going to be a better center fielder than Malik Smith. No disrespect to Malik Smith. An above average game, but still leaves a lot to be desired, so I'm going to stick it towards the middle of B tier. Then we've got Baseball Superstars 2009. When I talked about 2012, I said 2012 was not the best version. The best version you could argue is 2010. I'm putting 2009 out there because it was the first version of this game, and it was at least very close to the best version of this game, if not truly the best version. Considering those factors, again, great My Career mode, not bogged down by the annoying story mode. While the graphics weren't as good, S tier game for what it brought as early on in the mobile baseball game scene as it did. Before I talk about the last game here, we're going to talk about Wgt Baseball. A couple of you guys have asked me to bring it to the channel. I was hoping it was still active. I would have loved to have brought it to the channel. Unfortunately, I opened the app and they dropped support for it at the end of 2018, and you needed to connect to their online servers because you could develop a team in there. It was an underrated game. I didn't play it nearly as much as I wish I did. It had pretty good controls. You could develop your teams over time. It didn't originally have the MLB licensing, but I believe added it over time. So you could be an MLB franchise, but I don't think it had the real MLB players. It's a very good game, but without the MLB players was missing a little something. Still a quality game. I'm going to put it at the bottom, but it still absolutely deserves to be in the A tier. And then last but not least, Tap Sports Baseball. If you don't know how I feel about Tap Sports Baseball, if you're someone who plays Tap Sports Baseball, I feel sorry for you. It is genuinely the worst game I've ever played. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. It's F tier. If you have it installed, delete the game now. If you don't have it installed, don't install it. It's terrible. The games are all rigged, incredibly predetermined. There's no ability to use actual skill to manipulate the outcomes of these games. You have to pay to get enough good free packs to actually develop a competitive team in this game. I did play it like 3 or 4 years ago, so I'm speaking from experience back then, but I've watched honest criticism videos of this game from the past year or less that are saying the same issues that were always along. How people actually play this game, I don't understand. If you think Tap Sports Baseball is anything beyond F tier in terms of being better, click off this video. I don't care what you think about this game. It's the worst game ever. If you have opinions on literally any other game not named Tap Sports Baseball, I'm open to those in the comments. I can see arguments being made for any of these other games, but Tap Sports Baseball, the worst game I've ever seen, the worst game I've ever played. Awful. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. If you're new around here, subscribe for more mobile gaming content. I'll play several of these baseball games for the channel. I also play some non-baseball games. If you are another YouTuber that wants to make a list based on this, hit me up in the comments. Let me know where I should DM you, either Twitter or Discord or best. I can make Instagram work, but I don't really like Instagram. We'll get you the link. You can do your own rankings. I did make this list based on games that I personally have played. So if you're making the list and you haven't played all the games, you can exclude any games you haven't played. Again, with your opinions, if you disagree, I'm open to them, except for Tap Sports Baseball. Tap Sports Baseball sucks. You will never convince me differently. And honestly, if you need to dislike the video because you love Tap Sports Baseball, go for it. I'd rather have your dislike than anyone actually play Tap Sports Baseball because it's a terrible game. I'm sorry I mentioned it so much, but I really need to emphasize it. Thanks everybody for tuning in to this video. Hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, and as always, peace out.